The phrase, "they don't make them like they used to," applies to many things. Vinyl records, vintage pens, cars, Pizza Huts, or whatever else. But today, we are going to be talking about 1991's The Addams Family because, wow, they really don't make them like they used to. The Addams Family is one of those IPs that every single generation recognizes in some way, with multiple TV shows, movies, cartoons, and I do mean endless, stocks of merchandise at any of your local Hot Topic locations. It is safe to say that the Addams Family has captured our hearts and dollars for decades. And for my money, it doesn't get any weirder than Barry Sonnenfeld's 1991 film adaptation. A movie that may seem like a spooky family comedy that's fit for a night in with the kids, but in reality is much more f***ed up than you think. But here's the thing. This movie is so much more than just quirky or spooky. There's something about this movie that still gives me chills, and it's not for the reasons you think. Today, we are rewinding the clocks back to 1991, rediscovering The Addams Family and figuring out once and for all, what the f*** happened to this movie? The Addams Family follows the titular family, consisting of Gomez, Morticia, Pugsy, Wednesday, Granny, and Lurch. Oh, and of course, who could forget Thing. And the movie tracks them through their gothic and macabre misadventures. This includes such activities as seances, secret passageways, general mischief, and a couple scenes that imply that the children may be murderers. All things that every family deals with. This movie picks up with a depressed Gomez longing for a connection with his long-lost brother, Fester. Which you might notice the character of Fester had to be changed from being Morticia's uncle from the original TV series to now being Gomez's long-lost brother. Either way, still in the family. When a crooked real estate agent hatches a plan to settle his personal debts by working with a con artist called Gordon, played by Christopher Lloyd, to impersonate Uncle Fester and return home to reconnect and rob the Addams Family. And the movie essentially follows this exact plot line to its not so natural conclusion. And folks, the making of this movie is just about as dark as the movie itself. The film was written by Caroline Thompson and Larry Wilson and directed by the much underrated Barry Sonnenfeld in his first feature film. You would know Barry Sonnenfeld as the director of Men in Black, but his entire filmography is pretty much worth exploring. Now, originally the rights to the Addams Family as an IP were purchased by Orion in the late 1980s, and their thought was to make an adaptation for cinemas with a budget of $25 million, which at the time was definitely a solid amount of money to be dished out by a company like Orion. But as the script was being developed, pressure from Orion for this movie to perform started to trickle down. At this time, Orion Pictures was going broke and on the verge of bankruptcy, so they needed this investment in the Addams Family to pay off. The amount of pressure led to constant script rewrites during pre-production, which already started to balloon the film's budget. Before cameras even started rolling, the budget had swelled from $25 million to now $30 million. Again, a huge investment for Orion at the time. This added to the already high stakes of one single movie. Everything was riding on this. And before Sonnenfeld was even hired to direct, Tim Burton was considered to direct, which of course makes perfect sense. In fact, revisiting this movie, you can feel a lot of the Beetlejuice influence coming through. Although I do think the nature of the Addams Family is perfectly suited for Tim Burton, as we would later learn when he would take on the Netflix Wednesday series. Does anybody still watch? However, Burton was busy doing Batman stuff, so the gig went to Barry Sonnenfeld, who ended up doing a phenomenal job with this movie.
I was in Los Angeles finishing up the making of Misery when the front desk called and said, "We're sending up a package from Scott Rudin," who was the producer of Addams Family, and it was the script for Addams Family, and I didn't like the script at all. I was not trying to be a director. I was very happy being a cinematographer, but I also loved the Addams Family, the Charles Addams drawings. So I met Scott, told him that I thought the script needed a lot of work and I wasn't looking to be a director.
But directing the movie wasn't the only thing on the horizon for Sonnenfeld. He would have no choice but to take up multiple additional responsibilities during the making of the movie. But we're gonna come back to that. With a finished script and a crew ready to go, it was time to cast the film. But as usual, there was a problem. Orion was bleeding money and they could not afford to continue with this production, as they could have made 3 typical Orion movies for what this one movie was costing. So, in order to stay afloat, Orion sold the production to Paramount, which means that the movie could be made comfortably and would seemingly be free of intense studio pressure like Orion was applying. So the production moved and continued at Paramount Studios. And honestly, it is a miracle that they survived that handoff. What was happening behind the scenes at this point was bordering on cinematic disaster. People started to wonder if the movie was cursed. The film's main set piece was of course the Addams Family mansion, with a cost of a whopping $100,000 just to build it, not to mention to set dress it and everything else.
I was very much impressed by the sets. It's like you're in this old mansion that's been in the family for hundreds of years. Everything supports the acting, the furniture, the pictures, the wonderful costumes. You actually feel that you're there in your own home.
So with the budget being practically spent already, the casting had to be pretty strategic for this film. Raul Julia was cast as Gomez Addams, in what I can only describe as the ideal choice for this role. You'd know Raul as Bison from the Street Fighter movie, and he is just as intense and committed here, but in a much more enjoyable film. He calls this role the best one he has ever done and the one that he is the most proud of. That is sick. The legendary Angelica Houston, who kinda looks like my mom in the 90s, plays Morticia. She was an obvious choice for this role given her sensibilities to playing darker characters. Although the role was originally offered to Cher, obviously, but she turned it down. Houston says that her experience making this movie was slightly less enjoyable than Raul Julia's experience, which I find funny because he enjoyed it so much, and based on what we know now, she enjoyed it very little. See, in order to capture the iconic look of Morticia, Houston had to undergo mass amounts of costuming and augmentation that was less comfortable than she expected. Things like wearing a metal corset, gauze lifts, neck tucks, and fake nails daily. She even had strings anchored around her eyes to kind of pull them back and give her the big eyes to achieve Morticia's iconic look more accurately. Think about the commitment there. Nowadays, you could just do that on a computer. But this process did reportedly cause Houston to have intense migraines every single day.
Do it again.
The thing about Raul and Gomez is they both have total joy of life. Whether it's sadness, happiness, as long as it's emotional, that was Raul. And we were very lucky to cast Angelica Houston as Morticia, and they were both so perfect together. And Raul was Gomez in terms of his joy of life. And Morticia is perfectly portrayed by Angelica because she's so statuesque. Raul is all energy, and Angelica is all grounded.
Children!
Pugsley and Wednesday, the little hellspawn children, are played by Jimmy Workman and Christina Ricci respectively. Workman hasn't been seen in front of the camera for decades, however behind the camera, he does have quite a few credits as a crew member, so still getting to work on movies. You know, you just love to see it. Christina Ricci obviously needs no introduction, and in fact she's still working in the Addams Family space, as she plays a character in the aforementioned Wednesday TV series on Netflix. And this is just a fun little fact, Christina Ricci famously improvised the Wednesday sleeping sequence where she would cross her arms like Dracula or something when she was going to sleep. That's pretty fun. Of course, you have Judith Melinda as Granny and Carol Stroiken as my man Lurch. I love Lurch. John Franklin plays Cousin It, and who could forget Christopher Lloyd as Gordon/Fester. He's kind of our straight man / fish out of water, by which we get to see through his eyes and kind of observe the wackiness of the Addams Family.
I mean, when I thought of Chris Lloyd, I think of someone who's tall and lanky and thin. And I think of Uncle Fester as sort of a short, bald, fat man. He'll be standing up tall and thin, and you say, ready, roll camera. It's like you press a button and he drops down a foot.
Sorry, but I have to get back. I've got a lot of things cooking in the Bermuda Triangle.
Now, I love Christopher Lloyd in everything he's in, but in this movie specifically, man, what a performance. Interestingly, Anthony Hopkins was originally offered the role of Uncle Fester, but he also turned it down. But just when it seemed like things were finally under control, everything started to fall apart. What happened next would push the director and the entire crew to their breaking point.
The cinematographer, one of the great cameramen, Owen Roizman, agreed to meet me and talk about being cinematographer.
While most of the cast and crew went into this project fully committed and excited to do it, the production of the Addams Family was incredibly stressful for Sonnenfeld, as certain uncontrollable factors were working against him from the very beginning. Now, famously, Sonnenfeld was previously a career cinematographer, but this was his first directing gig, and he wanted to focus on the production as a whole, and this meant delegating some of the work, even the work that he was familiar with. This led to Barry Sonnenfeld hiring out for a cinematographer, in this case, Owen Roizman, and he was hired to take over the shooting of the movie, which everybody seemed excited about. Only he dropped out in pre-production due to a previous commitment to another movie. So Sonnenfeld hired another DP, and this time it was Gail Tattersall. Only he ended up getting incredibly ill during the production due to a severe sinus infection that left Gail in the hospital. Like I said, everybody thought this production was cursed, so after that, Barry Sonnenfeld, instead of hiring another DP, decided to just take on the role of cinematographer, and that would not be the first additional hat he would have to put on. This, of course, added stress to the production for Sonnenfeld. However, the one thing it did give him was complete control over the shots and cinematography of the movie, which, in my opinion, worked out. Look at how good some of these shots are. And as if director and director of photography wasn't already enough work on the plate of Barry Sonnenfeld, how about acting in the movie? Because he does make a cameo as a passenger on Gomez's model train. Notably, Thing was created using very low-tech practical effects. Hand actor Chris Hart, who had notoriously very long fingers, did a performance as the Thing with prosthetics and in-camera tricks such as cutting holes in tables to pop his hands through. It looks and works great. To me.
Thing was one of the hardest things to cast. For one thing, this is pre-CGI or any sort of electronic computer graphics.
Thank you, Thing.
We didn't have a lot of money for Thing. And Orion, which is the studio, had just done Oliver Stone's The Hand.
Thing, you're a handful.
And had lost a lot of money on The Hand. And they kept saying to me, we don't want to do another movie about a hand. And I said all of our shots with Thing are going to be done in camera.
So, in order to capture the lighthearted yet still dark nature of the Addams Family, the movie's tone, visual style, and performances were carefully crafted to both entice families and also reintroduce the Addams Family as the ghostly family next door who are not to be bothered. You don't want to get caught knocking on their door asking for sugar. Although if you need dynamite or cyanide, you know, they probably got you covered.
Cyanide. Fester. As if we'd run out.
Now, despite the constant setbacks that this production had, everybody from the cast and crew showed up every day and put in the work. And what came out of it was a product that audiences loved. The film was not only financially a huge success, but critically was received and has remained a favorable film for audiences. At the end of the day, barring a mess of production with problems around every single corner for a first-time director to deal with, issues with the distributors, changing studios, budgets swelling, scripts being rewritten, people going to the hospital.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Enough, I get the point.
Through all of that, the movie was picture-locked and released and is now remembered as a classic work of art. By the way, the film made like 7x its original budget, so I'm sure Orion kind of wishes they had held on to that a little bit longer. Oh, and by the end of the movie, Fester joins the family after all, because it turns out that he wasn't really Gordon, he really was Fester the entire time. It's a little bit crazy. But I'm glad they did that so that Christopher Lloyd could come back again as Fester. Like I said, hell of a performance. Because of course there is a sequel titled Addams Family Values from 1993. Same cast, same director, mostly the same crew, generally the same tone. And although it was not as successful as this first movie, I think it's still pretty damn good. And at the end of the day, all of this is maybe what makes the Addams Family so timeless. No matter how close it comes to completely falling apart, it just refuses to die. On screen or off. And folks, that is what the fuck happened to the Addams Family. Happy spooky season, everyone. I'll see you later. Peace. Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.